Welcome to our show, Tea Time with Tammy and Terrell. I am your co-host, Terrell Sally Holloman, your blood type lifestyle health coach. And my hostess with the mostest is Tammy R. Nobles, your success strategist. We're so excited to talk all things on this show, faith, fitness, and friends. And we want to remind women they are significant to make themselves a priority because it's vital for success. So bring your cup of tea or coffee and join us with a notebook and pen to grab some nuggets we'll be dropping as our guests will be showing up on this show too. And do hit that subscribe button on both of our channels. So hi everyone. So glad that you're here today. Special podcast with my sister friends here. I have Stacy, I have Kim, I have Letty, we have Jamie, and we have Janelle. My good friend Coach Tammy wasn't able to make it with us today, but we're on our show, Tea Time with Coach Tammy and Terrell. And we want to bring this to you guys. We did it last year. It was really a hit. And we thought we'd take some time out of our schedules to really talk about all the moms here on this panel here. We had a couple of questions that we have, and we're going to talk about those questions and how it affects us in our lives and other people that we are dealing with, and of course, our children. But we hope that this blesses you and gives you grace and mercy as you are a mom, or maybe you're not a mom, maybe you're a grandmom, maybe you're an auntie, maybe you're a cousin, maybe you're the one that just kind of stands in terms of being a guardian. But either way, we know how it feels from our hearts to be a mom, and we just want to take this time to come to you and celebrate you, okay, on this special podcast. So I have a question that I wanted to get us started with, and I'll share the question, and then we can pick whoever wants to go and it hits them to answer this question, okay? So the first question we want to talk about is share a particular moment in your journey as a mom that has tested your resilience and how you overcame it. I know that's a doozy for a lot of us, but and I don't want to start first, so I'll give it to anyone that wants to start first on that one.
I guess I'll start. um, so for me, I think the event was when I found out that my son was when he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and that was just kind of mind blowing. I didn't know what to expect, never heard of it. But what it did was it challenged me to help culture and an environment that he can grow in his area. Like, so to his how do I want to say it? Just to grow at his pace. So I think that was probably for me what it was that, because what parent, what mother, wants to hear anything other than, oh, your child is perfect, there's no health challenges. So for me, when he was diagnosed with autism, and then just navigating, okay, what does that look like? I think that's how it was for me.
I'm happy to jump in. Thank you so much for sharing that, Janelle. It's certainly powerful, no matter how many times you hear it. I think for me, the moment was when I realized I was going to have to step down to step up. And that meant that when my son was 3, I went on welfare. And it was the way that I could really focus on not only raising him, but on bettering myself, so that I could really provide at the level that, I felt like my parents provided for me. So while not the same situation, especially after my relationship fell apart. But really, it was realizing I need to step down so I can step up, and there was a lot of, back then, for me, at least, there was a lot of shame with that. And I think that recovery or that resilience really took place over time to get to the point where As I say it now, there's no shame in my game. So that for me was really that moment.
Well, I guess I'll jump in there next.
Listen,
I'm listening. I mean, it's I'm sure a lot of stories all of us have, and I just think for myself, just different challenges, and it seems like sometimes these things happen from birth. You know, you have one of my children; they were premature, and not and just going through some of those challenges, and and having to fight. Fight
Mhm.
because just different situations that go on in our children's life, and we're moms. Most of us as moms, we're born to fight for our children, no matter what it is. If you have to pick up and move, because I've had to go from, when I say from across the world to one side, because I had some life challenges, and I didn't want my kids to have to continue to live like that. So I had to make a big mama bear step and drive all across country and pack up whatever can fit in the van, and let's go and start all over. And I think that actually made me strong, and maybe to be able to recover for me and also recover for my children.
and these are some stories already that we could do a movie on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to
No.
think about the fact, yeah, you think about the fact when you said, Coach Janelle, about your son and finding out he's on the spectrum. Um, I want to ask you, how did you feel when the doctor told you that, or when you got him diagnosed?
Um, I felt relief because now I understood, or now I knew why he wasn't advancing like other children his age were, and just being able to have answers to why he would have outbursts for no reason, why if we did something different he would have a meltdown. So it was a relief for me to finally have answers to why he was doing things that he was, I believe, 6 years old when he was diagnosed. No, five or six when he was diagnosed. So it made a lot of sense for me once I got those answers. So I was relieved.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that has to be a big change in anyone's lives when we hear that. And then how Coach Stacy was talking about, that shame. That shame is, and I realized when my pastor said this one Sunday, he said the difference between guilt and shame is that guilt is you did something bad and you're acknowledging it so you can correct it. Shame is I am bad. So Coach Stacy, you were taking on that feeling like, hey, I got to get on, on welfare. I feel bad about myself, where
Mhm.
there's no shame in that. Like you said, you had to learn and kind of heal yourself from that. And I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that story right there. You agree on that one, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's pretty tough
Absolutely.
to come through. All of this that we're talking about today, some kind of way, it's the grace of God that we are here even having this conversation, because
Yes.
we can learn from each other just by what we just shared, you know? And Coach Kim talked about leaving one side of the country, going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and you know nothing and nobody. That's a big, as a mom, and bringing the kids, and that's a big change. I believe a lot of women would be able to relate to too. So this is some great stories. I'm glad we're sharing about this, and I definitely want to hear from Coach Letty and Coach Jamie on some things with regard to their, that moment in their life that was tested. So I'm going to be quiet right now.
Um, for me, my biggest challenge is now just having to leave my younger son while I went on my bodacious faith adventure with God and relocated, and really understanding that him being with his dad was the best decision for the process that I would be navigating with my teenage son who I have with me. and just being able to, allow God to love us through this process. And even for him as a teenager who is understanding what it's like to walk in faith, what it's like to trust God and in greater dimensions, which is like wow, and just watching him just endure the process and with calm, with grace and in peace, right? Even though it's uncomfortable, however, he has just been trooping, and it's like wow, I didn't know what to expect, but I just thank God that, you know, being able to watch him, handle the process with such maturity, and even my younger son with the transition, because this is the first time we've ever been separated. And so, hearing him and, even though he's like, I miss you, I'm like, I know, but he's strong to handle the adjustment. So that is just really amazing. And like, you shared earlier about just the grace of God that's in it, and how he just loves us through as we have to mom it through, these life, transitions and adjustments, and I wouldn't even call them circumstances, but just growth developments is what we get to learn in our parenting journey with our children.
And I can go ahead and share. Goodness, there are so many times that I can think of where or like just raising my kids has been a test, and um, just how God is just so faithful and how he comes through. And I think of when my kids were younger, we had to also go on welfare, Stacy. And for us, we were starting a business. And right as we started a business, I found out I was pregnant. And and at that time, like our business was few and far between. And so it was like it was a God journey. And now I've got a 17-year-old who is getting ready to graduate high school, and I've got a 15-year-old who is learning how to drive. And so it's like there's so many different things in life that are like a test, but it really, for me, it just points me back to God, and just knowing that I can trust you, Lord. You're always with me, and I know that you're faithful, and you have placed everything on the inside of me that I need to walk through this time. And I trust is it's a big challenge, but but it is just, I'm just so thankful that we have God.
Yeah, that was awesome, Coach Jamie. Just like I said to Coach Stacy, you already relate to her story, and we're just sisters sitting here talking about it, right? And making that transition as being a business owner. And folks, if you don't know, Coach Jamie owns a farm, so she has the real chickens and all the good stuff for a farm. And her husband are very successful in what they do. But taking on that as a new couple, and then like you said, then you get pregnant, you're like, oh my gosh, how do we handle this when the funds aren't there? And like Coach Stacy said, there's no shame in that. And then Coach Letty, to be on this journey right now in the present tense, not past, that's in the present tense, knowing that she's leaving a younger son at home. That's guts, that's trust, that's God led, totally God led. And I look at her and I'm like in awe sometimes. I'm like, God, that is true faith. I pray that I have faith like that to walk in anything that happens in my life going forward. And when you guys are talking, I'm trying to think of, like Jamie said, there's so many times with our children that we think of moments that has been tested. But one comes in mind. At the time, my daughter was 15. She's 28 now, just to show you how far back that is. But I remember this time when she really tested me. I have two children, a son and a daughter. And she was at that stage, I feel, when they're rebelling, they're trying to figure out their way, they're challenging your authority in the household. And she said a couple of things to me that night. And I said, well, we can't have two queens in this house. So as a result, and it took the life out of me to do this, I said, well, if you want to continue on that road, you're going to have to live somewhere else. And I drove her all the way from the state of New Jersey, all the way to the other side of New York, all the way out in Queens, and dropped her off with her nana, which is my mother-in-law. Because at the time I felt I wasn't being the best mom that she needed at the time. And I know I needed some more help and some more knowledge and some more, just forgiveness. I don't know what it was at the time, but I knew that she couldn't stay here. And my nana, my mother-in-law, took that on, and she says, it's okay. We all been there at that time when we had to pass the baton some kind of way, whatever the situation was. And she took her for the next 4 months and loved on her and cared for her. And during that time, my daughter realized, I mean, we went to therapy for this, that I wasn't being mean. I was doing what I can as a mom. There's no manual, and we have to learn to get past this. So both of us had to learn how to overcome, how to forgive each other. And as a result of that, now Taylor's, like I said, 28, going almost on 35, the way she's sometimes. But we have the better relationship now. She calls me her best friend. I don't know why, but she does. Um, but I know now that at 15, we had to go through that to have the relationship we have today, you know? So just to say that, moms, we do so many things. We have so many titles, and we work diligently with the Lord to keep us faithful, to keep us in prayer, to keep us covered, to have that generosity, to nurture our children, and just get what we need in our community. And the sisters on this lot right now, I'm telling you, are some of the closest folks I know in my community, that we are really here to help each other through whatever we're dealing with. And I can honestly say that. So I wanted to bring another question as we're talking about this, because as moms, as business owners or employers, we're in the ministry, right? um, you know, how do we balance all of this? We all have personal ambitions, and with the demands of motherhood, how do we balance all of that? So anyone can start that conversation, and we'll move right into that. Who wants to get us started on that one?
I can start. So for me, I have a little bit interesting. I mean, my husband is a home or a business owner. I'm a business owner, and then I also homeschool my kids. And so, and I have since kindergarten. Now they're going to be in their junior year and senior year of high school, and so it's been a journey all along. But I have always made time to really focus on my kids. And like whenever they were younger, I would make them do, like, if they were when they were really little, they did a 2-hour nap time. And that's when I would really focus on what I needed to focus on for my business. And then as I got older, I still built that time in for them because I wanted them to learn how to relax, because I didn't know how to do that. And so I gave them a quiet time. 1 hour they could play quietly together, and the other hour they could read quietly. And just to give them that time. And now as they're older, like, I see that inside of them, like they want to start their own businesses and they want to do things that like God has placed on their heart to do. My son wants to be a pastor. My daughter wants to help girls who are trafficked to know that God loves them and they're beautiful, and just to show them their true identity. And it's just amazing just to see how that works. But like, it was definitely a balance game. There was a time where I was out of balance, where I was so focused on my business. My kids probably my husband didn't even see me for like months. And it was when I hit a wall and I was like, I can't live like this. This is not life, that I had to step back and say, there's got to be a balance. So I worked in a routine and just 2 hours a day. That was my goal. And everybody's like, you cannot be successful 2 hours a day. I'm like, watch me, because I've got God on my side, and I'm going to focus on my family more than I focus on my business, and God's going to bless it. And so that's kind of where I started.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. And thank you, Jesus. I don't have to do that anymore. But my one and only is now 31. And so although he lived abroad for a number of years and has just come back to the nest, y'all pray for a sister. The reality is that I no longer have to balance. Yet, when I was on that trajectory of professional growth, and so while trying to excel in my career and raise my son, it was really a challenging balance at times. And I believe that one of the things that really helped me the most was showing myself grace. I think that was the only way, I did it. I look back retrospectively. I can admit that I wish we had more fun. Um, and yet, he's a good young man. He's thriving. He's, living his God ordained life. And so, I guess it was enough fun. But yeah, I don't have that challenge anymore. So power to you, sisters, with the little people.
When I think about that word balance, honestly, when back then, because my kids are, grown out house, all that kind of good stuff, I didn't know nothing about no balance. I didn't know nothing about no boundaries. This is this new stuff, this new generation. I'm going to be honest. I didn't know what was that. You had your kids, you took them, they went with you, and that's just how it was. You know, I didn't think until later on in life, maybe high school, then you get a little bit more, oh, I can actually do something. I know right now, depending what age your kids are, it's a different journey. However, my journey, those words wasn't even in our vocabulary.
That was so, so good. Um, I'm like Coach Kim, back then I have 4 children. So I have four different generations, with my oldest being 31, my youngest being 11. So I have a 24-year-old and a 17-year-old. And so, interestingly enough, there was a time when we were all in the same house together, and that we had not had that dynamic in such a long time. And I remember, like, I was doing everything like a mad woman. When I say, y'all, it was crazy. And I remember I was like grumbling to God, and I'm like, oh my God, like, how do these women like do this? Right. Like, I'm like, oh my God, Lord, like, I'm doing blah, 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 and I'm doing this. And he was like, yeah, well, maybe you need to just stop that and start delegating some things around. And I was like, huh. Right. Cause I'm like, you call me to this business and I have to take time to do this. And then I'm like, and I homeschooled my younger son for 3 years. And so, with that, then my daughter didn't drive. So I was driving her back and forth to work. And then I had my oldest son. And then sometimes his car would break down. So then I'd be trying to navigate with him. My teenage son, who was like in middle school at the time, was playing basketball. So I was like the real basketball, like kind of like Uber mom too at the same time. So I was doing so much. And I remember when I was reading Proverbs 31 one morning, and I was like, how did she do that? And I just really started studying it. But I recognized that she had such a devotion to God that gave her the grace to do all of those things and do them so successfully. And I kept saying, like, Lord, how did I do that? And he was like, some of these things you're just gonna have to let go and let them do their particular portion and part. And once I'd done that, it was such a relief. I'm like, tag, I should have done this so long ago. So it's just that when you think about just like balance, it's kind of like, really, what is that? Because I don't think there's ever a balance. There's always going to be something that weighs, more than the other. So I just kind of asked God to teach me how to have some grace so I knew what to lean into, what not to lean into, and really allowed myself not to feel so overwhelmed, because for a while it was like, all right, this is a lot. So I just thank God that we have that in Him to be able to take that moment to say, okay, how can I actually do this better, where everything gets addressed and nothing feels untouched? So that was my experience.
Um, I think kind of along the lines of Coach Kim, even though my son he's going to be 17 this year, he's a lot more independent now than before. So I'm able to delegate some things to him, whereas before it was just all on me. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out that balance thing sometimes. Like even like what Coach Lady said, I love that grace. Like Lord, show me what to really focus on, and not so much focus on the things that are not, I don't want to say meaningless, but focusing, putting all my on something that doesn't need it. So just asking God to give me the grace in everything.
And we got some good stories to tell with regard to this one. It seems I can relate to pretty much everybody here. Mine are definitely out of the house. I'm an empty nester, so I don't have the little ones anymore. But I remember, gosh, I remember when I got diagnosed with systemic lupus, and then my children came. So having a health condition plus having little ones, boy, was that a combination for me. Then I'm working 70-hour work weeks, attempting to please everybody at work, trying to quote unquote, like Coach Kim said, there was no balance. There's no such thing as boundaries and stuff like that. Um, but I did the best I can. I thank God for my husband for really being the source of everything that we do here. And I didn't know God like I know Him now, but He got me through regardless of what happened. So I definitely understand that it's not easy being you know ambitious, put together. We not always put together. You do what you can. You give grace and mercy, and you move ahead as much as you can with your children, and you pray that they understand. As much as you can communicate. And stuff like that. So it's good to see you, Coach Jamie. I know you have to hop off. And I believe that Janelle has to hop off too. So I'm glad they had some time with us today, uh, with regard to our special podcast, our special podcast. But I will ask this though, and we're going to end soon. Is share a piece of advice you received from another mother that significantly impacted your parenting. Who wants to start that one? A piece of advice someone gave you that's another mom that really helped you in your road.
I'll I'll start before I leave. Um, to not compare myself to other mothers. That was pretty powerful because especially as a new mom, and when your child is not going according to the milestones, you kind of wonder, am I doing something wrong? So that's the best piece of advice. You mother your child the way your child needs to be mothered.
Yeah, and I'll go next so I can share before I have to hop off. But for me, it was just the basic of like, make sure to keep God first, because a lot of times when we're raising those young kids, our schedules are crazy. Our Bible time doesn't look like it did before we had kids. And so just making sure that we took time to spend with God, I think that was really huge, because I've seen so many moms struggle, and especially with their walk with God during that time. And I don't know that I could have done it without him. So that's where I would say that's probably the best advice that I received.
Well, I want to thank you, ladies, for being here. The ones that Janelle and Jamie have to hop off. And those were powerful statements. No comparison, and how often we do it. And thank you, Jamie, for that too. Keeping God first, because now look at what you're doing in your life with all the teens, and bringing them to God too. So I really appreciate you both. Who wants to go next, Letty or Stacy or Kim?
I'll go next. And what I'm going to say, well, I'm just going to say it. Put your kids first. And I'm not talking about over God or your spouse. I'm talking about those that might be a single mom and they're putting other things before their kids. They're putting their relationships before their kids, and perhaps, that 60-hour work week before their kids, or you can probably fill in the blank, because our kids need us. That's really the bottom line. Our kids need us. You can have a relationship after they grow up. You got a lot of years to do that, or other things that you might want to put in that place. So I think with that, the power of no, that you're going to have to say some no's to be able to keep your kids first, to be able for you to nourish them and help them and guide them and all of that, and not someone else. Not you know yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. Think yeah.
Oh, that's good. I love what everybody shared. I didn't have anything from a particular mom, but one thing that I did learn over the years in motherhood, and I would love to share with other moms, is to be present with your children. One of the things that I didn't realize, as moms, we wear many hats. We have many roles, and a lot of times we, like to think, because especially for single moms and even sometimes married moms, because sometimes some husbands are not as interactive in the parenting journey, because some men feel like they make the bacon and they bring it home, and mama, you do the rest, and so you don't always get that support from your spouse that you'd like to get to. So sometimes it does feel like you're doing that on your own as well. But what I did recognize is being present and being able to make sure that your children are seen and they're heard and they're able to express themselves. I'm not sure about you ladies, but I know growing up, you know how we grew up, especially I got an OG mama. I'm from New York. So it was like, stay in the kids' place, out of sight, you know what I mean? Like, you don't say anything, you don't express yourself. And it's so interesting, me being in my 50s now and having conversations with my mom, and especially when we talk about children, but really understanding how I had to lean into God's guidance and counsel in that, because my parents were physically present, but not emotionally present. And so a lot of the times, a lot of our children are facing that, because as moms, we're the only ones. So some moms have to work two jobs to just make ends meet. And so they're not always able to be emotionally present because they have their own distresses. But I would just like to share with moms, even if that may be your case, to take the time out to really breathe, right? Take a deep breath. And even if you're experiencing any kind of emotional challenges, take the time to put yours aside and see if there are any emotional challenges that your children may be facing. And one time for me was in middle school. My daughter was, there was like a high rate of children suicide, y'all. Like, it was mind blowing for me. And not realizing in middle school that there were several children in her school that committed suicide. And I never really knew how that impacted her emotionally. And I remember just repenting to my children, like, forgive me for not being fully present to realize the emotional challenges that you guys face with, from outside and with your peers. So I just like to share with moms, like, just be present in all aspects when it comes to really fulfilling the needs of what your children may need above yours.
I think I would say I love what Coach Letty just said. Um, that our parents, at least my parents, never apologized for anything, and that was one of the things that I took into my parenting, was to apologize. Some of the advice I received was, one, there is no perfect parent, so stop striving for perfectionism. And I also, as a single mom, had a couple of people tell me early in the process, release the guilt. The guilt of having a child out of wedlock, the guilt of your relationship falling apart, the guilt of not being able to provide financially like it's a two-parent household. So that released the guilt. While it was a practice, of course, I wish they said release the guilt, and it was like, whoop, guilt be gone. But that for me was really powerful. And I think that, knowing I wasn't perfect allowed me to apologize to my son in the moments when I realized I could have done that differently, or I didn't acknowledge the fact that, he's 10 and I'm, 30, and we think differently. And, um, I all of those lessons honestly have continued to be important and meaningful to me, even as my offspring is an adult.
Listen, all of this is great. And I'm sure everyone that's listening to this is like, wow. I mean, we've heard from Coach Letty. I love that about being present. I think a lot of times in our lives as parents that we didn't do that. I like what you said, Coach Kim, with like, hey, put your kids first. You know, you're not saying before God, of course, you're not saying, but there's things that we fill ourselves up with, and we don't put our children first. And then, of course, Coach K, Stacy, you're saying, hey, that guilt, man, that's some real stuff. That is some real stuff with the guilt. You just feel guilty. Maybe you're not spending enough time, or they don't have enough of the things like their friends do, especially as a single mom. You said you were a single mom. And I feel that for myself, I would say some words came from Jeff's mom. I was really tight with her. She said to me, being a new parent and being in this space, that I was like, okay, because I remember telling her, I didn't grow up in a household where I can voice myself or express myself. It was like kids are seen and not heard. And I remember her telling me something like to the effect, and I don't know if I'm saying this, of course, verbatim, but she said, have an open door policy with your children. Allow them to come to you and foster that mother daughter or mother son, whatever whatever you get, that they're able to tell you about anything. She said, I don't care if it's sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Come to you and my son first, because you're their first teachers. She told me you're the first teachers in the household, and they don't need to learn stuff off the street from their friends. You have that open door policy where they can voice. You said you didn't have it, so you make sure you have it in your household. And I used to tell my husband a lot of times when we used that, open door policy. At one point, as they got teenagers, they really voicing stuff, and I'm like, maybe we shouldn't have started this at all, because now I'm hearing stuff I don't want to hear. But I had to be real because this is real life, right? Um, and they turned out. I mean, they turned out. I felt pretty good. In life, and they're able to use their voices and advocate for themselves, right? Whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a job, whether it's advocating moving somewhere new or going to college, they're able to use their voices, and they both have great self-esteem. They're both very, very confident. And I didn't have all of that because I felt at home I wasn't able to express myself. I wasn't able to use my voice. So I'm so happy that we had this time to really share from our hearts, as moms, as business owners, as all the tabs we have, and that we can show some of the ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I am blessed to have a husband that was very, very involved in our children's lives. I usually did the pickup and drop off. I can remember the basketball games, the volleyball, and all this other stuff. And when he was able to, he would be there too. I've been blessed like that. At the same time, I believe these questions are really here for you as a mom that are listening now, and also catch us on the replay. That ask yourself those questions we talked about during this session, and see exactly where you are, and then have community. Find sisters that you have respect for, that are walking the walk, and where you want to be, so that can help you in terms of just improving just a little bit better. If we improve ourselves 1% each day, that's 365%. Well, maybe half, 180. Okay, let's say 185% that you can improve in your walk with your children. So I want to thank all of our ladies that were here today. Coach Letty, Coach Stacy, Coach Kim, Coach Jamie, and Coach Janelle were here. And that we were able to really have this conversation. I felt that it was well worth it for you ladies to be here with, tea time with Tammy and Terrell. So I thank you so much for this time together. And anyone that wants to contact any of the ladies here, we're going to work on putting some show notes, at least a site or, some way you contact them on social media, because most of us are on either LinkedIn, Facebook, and what's the other one? Instagram. You could find us basically those three areas some kind of way with our names. So we want to thank you so much for the time together. I have another pop up another time this year, but we'll see what happens. Thank you for being here with Coach Tammy and Terrell's Tea Time with Tammy and Terrell. We're missing Coach Tammy today, but that's okay. She'll be back next time. All right, guys, take care and be blessed.
Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Tea Time with Tammy and Terrell. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more